My parents deleted my YouTube channel with 250K subs because of my spoiled sister. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. My name is Lena, I'm 17, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the type of person who likes to build things quietly, without needing anyone else's validation. While other kids were busy chasing parties or trying to be popular, I found comfort in my little corner of the internet. My channel started when I was 13. At first, it was just a way to escape, silly edits, storytelling, little projects I never showed anyone. Over time, it grew into something I couldn't believe. People were watching, people cared, and before long, there were over 250,000 people subscribed. I kept it hidden from my family, not because I was ashamed, but because it was mine. The one thing I built for myself. My parents never noticed how much time and effort I poured into it because, truthfully, they never noticed much about me at all. Their attention was almost entirely consumed by my younger sister, Celia. She's 15 and has always been what they call the special one. She doesn't lift a finger around the house, doesn't bother with grades, and yet she's praised constantly. If Celia gets a B, it's celebrated like a miracle. If I get straight A's, it's barely worth a nod at the dinner table. I try not to let it bother me, but the truth is, favoritism runs deep in our house, and I've grown used to being the afterthought. It wasn't just the grades. Celia always got what she wanted. If she asked for money, she got it. If she messed up, it was shrugged off as kids being kids. I, on the other hand, was expected to set the example, do the chores, watch her when my parents went out. They would never admit it out loud, but the rules were clear. Celia's happiness mattered more than anything, and mine came somewhere after the laundry and dishes. So my channel became more than just a hobby. It became proof that I mattered. Proof that I had value outside the walls of our house. Every subscriber felt like a small victory. Every comment a reminder that someone out there actually saw me. I never told Celia about it because I knew she'd find a way to make it about herself, or worse, try to ruin it. And I never told my parents because I already knew how little they respected things that belonged to me. Still, I never imagined they would go as far as they did. I thought if I kept my head down, stayed quiet, and kept it separate from family life, it would remain safe. But the truth is, in a house like mine, nothing that belongs to me is ever really mine. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I should have known that one day, they'd take even this away from me, the one place in the world that felt like mine alone. I never thought they'd take away the one thing I built for myself. Growing up, it was always clear who mattered most in our house. If Celia broke something, the blame somehow landed on me. If she forgot her homework, Mom would rush to email her teacher and make excuses, saying Celia was too stressed or didn't feel well. When she stayed out late with friends, Dad pretended not to notice. But if I so much as came home 5 minutes after curfew, the entire house turned into a lecture hall. Celia knew how to twist things to her advantage. She'd pout, cry, or act helpless until someone gave in. I remember once she maxed out Dad's credit card on clothes she didn't need. Instead of being punished, she was comforted. Mom hugged her and said, "It's okay, sweetie, you're young, you'll learn." Meanwhile, I was told to stop being so judgmental when I asked why she wasn't held accountable. Royce, my dad, had a way of shutting me down every time I tried to speak up. He never shouted, but his voice was sharp, like he was disappointed just by the sound of me. He always said things like, "Don't make this about you, Lena," or "Your sister needs more support than you do." It was as if my needs didn't even exist. Danica, my mom, wasn't cruel the same way. She just never stood up for me. Anytime Celia was caught in a lie or in trouble, Mom rushed in to shield her, saying she was sensitive or still figuring things out. It felt like I was living with two parents who had agreed long ago that only one daughter deserved protecting. At school, I pushed myself harder than anyone asked me to. Straight A's weren't enough. I took extra classes, stayed up late working on projects, applied for scholarships. I wanted something to prove I had value, something they couldn't ignore. But even when I brought home awards, they ended up tossed on the counter or shoved into a drawer. Meanwhile, Celia once managed a C on a test she didn't study for, and it was treated like a triumph. At home, the imbalance never let up. I was expected to cook, clean, and pick up after everyone. If dishes piled in the sink, I had to wash them, even if Celia made the mess. If laundry needed folding, it somehow landed in my hands. On weekends when Celia wanted rides to the mall, Dad dropped everything. But when I asked to be taken to a study group across town, the answer was always, "Figure it out yourself." Slowly, I stopped bothering to ask for anything. It became easier to fade into the background, to act like I didn't care. But the truth is, I cared more than I ever let on. Each small moment stacked on top of the last, like bricks building a wall between me and them. I wasn't angry all the time, but the feeling of being invisible ate at me. Celia wasn't just the favorite, she was the only one they seemed to see. By the time I realized how deep it ran, it was too late. The gap between us had grown into something permanent. I was still in the house, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like I was living as a guest, tolerated but never really wanted. Every day, the resentment inside me quietly grew, waiting for the moment it would spill over. One evening, I came home to find my bedroom door slightly open. I always kept it closed, so my stomach sank instantly. On my desk, my laptop screen glowed. Celia was sitting in my chair, clicking through my files. She jumped when she saw me, but it was too late. She had already found my channel. The look on her face wasn't surprise, it was envy. Her eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the videos, the comments, the subscriber count that had taken me years to build. She spun the chair toward me with a smirk, like she had discovered a secret treasure. "So this is what you've been hiding," she said, dragging her finger across the screen. "All this time, you've been acting like you're better than me, and you never said a word." I tried to snatch the laptop from her hands, but she pulled it back. "You've got thousands of people watching you, and you never even told your own family. Do you know how selfish that is?" She wasn't impressed or proud. She was furious that I had something she didn't. Then came the demand. "You're going to let me be in the videos. If you don't, I'll tell Mom and Dad everything." Her voice was sharp, her chin tilted high like she already had me cornered. I froze. The thought of Celia being anywhere near the channel made my skin crawl. It wasn't just about privacy. That channel was mine, my space, my ideas, my years of work. The thought of her taking credit for it, or turning it into another stage for her drama, was unbearable. "No," I told her. "This isn't yours. You can't just take it." Her face twisted. "Then I'll tell them you've been hiding money and keeping secrets. Do you think they'll believe you? Or me?" She said it with such certainty, like she had already won. I laughed nervously, more out of disbelief than anything. I didn't think she would actually go that far. To me, her words sounded like another empty threat, just noise to get under my skin. I thought if I ignored her, she'd lose interest. After all, she never stuck with anything for long. I pushed past her, closed my laptop, and told her to leave my room. She stormed out, muttering that I would regret it. Her footsteps echoed down the hall, and I shook my head, trying to convince myself she was bluffing. But even as I locked the door behind her, unease sat heavy in my chest. I should have known Celia wasn't the type to back down when jealousy got the better of her. I should have realized that what she saw on that screen wasn't just my hard work. It was power she didn't have. At the time, I brushed it off, convinced she wouldn't dare. I told myself she was too lazy to follow through, too spoiled to put in the effort to really hurt me. What I didn't see then was how far she was willing to go once she felt I had something she couldn't control. That night was only the beginning. It didn't take long before Celia made her move. One night after dinner, I heard her voice carrying from the living room. She was crying, her words tumbling out in pieces as she clutched Dad's arm. From the doorway, I caught fragments of what she was saying, claims that I was keeping money hidden, talking to strangers, doing things online I shouldn't. She made it sound like I was living some dangerous double life. By the time I walked into the room, both of my parents were glaring at me like I was a stranger. Dad's face was set and cold. Mom's lips pressed tight as if she had already judged me. Celia stepped back with her arms folded, her tears drying into a smug little smile. Royce was the first to speak. His tone was sharp, like he was a judge delivering a sentence. "What exactly have you been hiding from us, Lena? Your sister tells us you've been making money behind our backs, keeping secrets from this family. What are you involved in?" I opened my mouth to explain, but the way they looked at me made my throat close. I finally managed to say, "It's nothing dangerous. I've just been working on a project online. Videos. That's all." Mom leaned forward, her voice soft but cutting. "Why would you keep something like that from us? Families don't keep secrets. If you had nothing to hide, you would have told us." I wanted to scream that I had every reason to hide it, that it was mine, that I had built it alone because no one in this house ever cared about what I loved. But instead I said, "It's just a creative outlet. I'm not doing anything wrong." Neither of them listened. Royce shook his head like he was tired of me. "Selfish," he muttered. You've been sneaking around under our roof, pretending we don't deserve to know what you're up to. You think you can live in this house and run some secret life? That's not how families work. Then came the demand. Dad held out his hand, palm flat. Give me the password. Right now. If it's as innocent as you say, you shouldn't have a problem with us seeing it. My stomach dropped. I pictured them poking through my videos, deleting things, or even worse, forcing Celia into them just to make things fair. The thought made my skin crawl. No, I said quietly but firmly. I can't. That's mine. The room went silent for a moment, and then Mom's voice cut through like ice. You're being difficult for no reason. We're your parents. We have a right to know. But I didn't move. I knew if I gave in, it would all be over. Royce's jaw tightened, his face hardening in a way that made me shrink back. So this is what it's come to. You'd rather lie to us than share with your own family. His voice carried disappointment, but underneath it was anger. Real anger. Celia didn't have to say another word. My refusal had sealed their choice, and of course, they chose her side. In their eyes, I was no longer the daughter who worked hard and kept her head down. I was the problem, the ungrateful one, the liar. And from that night on, nothing I said could change it. It happened on a night when I wasn't even home. I had stayed late for a school event, helping clean up after everyone had left. By the time I got back, the house was quiet, but something felt off. My bedroom door, which I always locked, was wide open. My chest tightened when I saw my laptop sitting on the desk, lid half closed, as if someone had been there recently. I rushed over, heart pounding, and opened the screen. My stomach dropped the second I realized what had happened. My channel was gone. Not just one video, not just a few files, everything. Years of work, every late night spent editing, every moment of effort I had poured into building it, completely erased. The account had been deleted, like it never even existed. The panic hit first, then the disbelief. My hands shook as I clicked through tabs, hoping maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe it was just hidden somewhere. But the truth stared me in the face. All those hours, all the comments, all the people who had supported me, it was gone with a single action. I stormed into the living room, where my parents were sitting with Celia, who looked far too pleased with herself. You gave her permission to go through my laptop? My voice cracked as I tried to hold back the anger. Dad didn't flinch. She told us she was upset about what you were doing. We decided it was best to let her handle it. If it was causing trouble in this family, it needed to stop. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stop. That was my work. I spent years building it. You let her erase everything. Mom folded her arms and sighed, as though I was overreacting. Family comes first, Lena. If it was hurting your sister, then it wasn't worth keeping. You'll thank us one day. The words hit harder than anything else. To them, it wasn't even a loss. They hadn't seen the nights I stayed awake editing until my eyes burned, the hours I spent learning how to make it better. They didn't care that I had built something on my own. All that mattered was Celia's comfort. Celia leaned back into the couch, a smug look on her face. She didn't need to say anything. I knew she had won. She had taken away the only space I had for myself, and my parents had handed her the key. I stood there frozen. My voice was gone, my arguments useless. Nothing I said would change their minds. They had already decided that what I created was worthless compared to keeping Celia happy. That night, something inside me broke. It wasn't just about losing the channel. It was losing the one place where I felt seen, where I had control, where I had finally mattered. Watching it disappear because of their decision left me hollow. I went back to my room, shut the door, and stared at the empty screen. The silence was crushing. I realized then that in this house, nothing I built would ever be safe. The days after losing everything felt like walking through fog. I woke up in the mornings with no reason to get out of bed, but I still forced myself to go to school. My body was there, but my mind was stuck on the empty screen I had left behind. In class, I couldn't focus. The words on the board blurred together, and when teachers called on me, I stumbled over answers I normally would have known. A few of them pulled me aside, asking gently if something was wrong. I nodded, pretending I was just tired, but the truth was heavier than I could explain. My friends noticed too. At lunch, they asked why I was so quiet, why I stopped laughing at their jokes or joining their conversations. I smiled when I needed to, but I kept my real thoughts locked away. How could I tell them that the only thing I had worked for, the one thing that made me proud, had been destroyed by the people who were supposed to protect me? At home, life moved on as if nothing had happened. My parents carried on with their routines, talking about work or groceries, never once acknowledging what they had taken from me. It was like the whole incident had been erased, just like my channel. When they looked at me, there was no guilt, no regret, only the same distance that had always been there. Celia, though, made sure I didn't forget. She walked past my room, tossing little comments over her shoulder. "Guess you're not so special anymore." Or she'd grin and say, "Now you don't have anything without me." She wanted me to break in front of her, to see me fall apart. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. On the outside, I stayed silent, kept my face blank, pretended her words bounced off me. But inside, every jab carved deeper. Her victory wasn't just in taking something from me. It was in reminding me that I had no one in that house willing to stand on my side. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, I replayed everything, the way Dad had dismissed me, the way Mom had brushed it off, the smug look on Celia's face. My chest ached, not from anger alone, but from the hollow space left behind. I had built something with years of effort, and it had been stolen in minutes. The weight of it pressed on me until sleep became impossible. Still, beneath the sadness, something else began to form. A quiet promise I whispered to myself when no one could hear. They thought I would crumble and stay broken. They thought I had nothing left. But I held on to the thought that this wasn't the end for me. Lying in the dark, I told myself over and over, "They'll regret this." All of them. It was the only thing that kept me from sinking completely, the only spark that reminded me I wasn't finished yet. After weeks of drifting through days without direction, I decided I couldn't stay in that place forever. Something inside me hardened. I stopped waiting for my parents to recognize what they had done or for Celia to stop tormenting me. Instead, I turned all of my energy toward building a way out. I began small. I picked up every opportunity one could find. Babysitting for neighbors, tutoring younger kids after school, even helping an elderly woman down the street with her errands. The money wasn't much at first, but I tucked every dollar away where no one could touch it. Slowly, my envelope of cash thickened, and with each bit saved, I felt a little stronger. I also started keeping track of everything I did at home. When I bought groceries with my own money, I kept the receipt. When I paid for school supplies or chipped in for gas, I wrote it down. I didn't know exactly how I'd use this record, but it gave me proof that I wasn't the selfish one they painted me to be. It was a quiet shield I carried in secret. Late at night, while the rest of the house slept, I researched colleges far from our town. I scrolled through programs, scholarships, and dorm options, studying every detail like it was a lifeline. I imagined what it would feel like to pack my bags and leave without looking back. That vision became my fuel, the thing that got me through the long days of keeping my head down. At home, I stopped fighting. When Celia made snide remarks, I didn't answer. When my parents compared me to her, I stayed quiet. On the outside, it might have looked like I had given up, but inside I was planning. Every time I refused to react, it was another step toward taking back control. They didn't realize it, but their words no longer had power over me. I grew colder, but not in a cruel way, more like I had built a wall around myself. I didn't share my thoughts, didn't reveal my plans. I learned to smile just enough to avoid questions, but never enough to invite conversation. In that silence, I found focus. The money I saved became more than cash, it became freedom. Each hour of tutoring, each babysitting shift, added another brick to the path leading out of that house. I wasn't rushing. I knew patience was key. If I wanted to leave for good, I had to do it carefully. Every day, as I walked through the halls at school or past my family in the kitchen, I repeated one thought in my head. This is temporary. I didn't belong in that house forever. I was creating a future they couldn't take from me, no matter how hard they tried. And for the first time in a long while, the heaviness in my chest began to lift. Not because things at home were better, but because I finally had a plan that was mine and mine alone. It all came to a head one weekend when our relatives came over for dinner. The house was crowded with voices, plates clattering, and laughter that felt forced to me. Celia, as always, was the center of attention. She pranced around the table, talking about things she wanted, demanding new clothes and more spending money. My parents nodded along, trying to keep her happy, while everyone else watched with polite smiles. But when she started complaining that she deserved more support because life was so hard for her, something inside me snapped. I had kept quiet for months, letting her gloat and letting my parents cover for her. But that night, I couldn't hold it back anymore. "Really?" I said, my voice louder than I meant. The room went quiet. Celia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. You're sitting here begging for more money when you've already blown through Dad's credit card and lied about it? You barely pass your classes, you skip assignments, and you've been sneaking things out of my room for years. And they let you get away with all of it. Gasps spread around the table. My aunts and uncles exchanged looks. My grandmother set down her glass slowly, her eyes fixed on Celia. Celia's face turned red, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. "She's lying," she shouted, pointing at me, but her voice cracked, and it only made her look guiltier. I didn't stop. "Do you all know she stole money from Mom's purse last month?" And when I called her out, she laughed because she knew they'd never punish her. "She's been failing math for 2 semesters, but Mom told her teacher she was sick just to excuse it. They protect her from every consequence, and she knows it." The room fell into heavy silence. My dad's face darkened, not with anger at Celia, but with humiliation. My mom fidgeted with her napkin, avoiding everyone's eyes. The relatives looked at them differently now, no longer with admiration but with disbelief. "Lena, that's enough," Dad snapped, his voice low but firm. "This is not the place." But the damage was already done. The guests weren't looking at me like I had stepped out of line. They were staring at Celia, and then at my parents, like they were finally seeing the truth I had lived with for years. Celia shoved her chair back and stormed out of the room, muttering under her breath. My parents tried to smooth things over with awkward smiles and excuses, saying she was just under pressure, and I was being too harsh. But no one seemed convinced anymore. For the first time, I felt a shift. The weight that had always pressed me down in that house loosened a little. I had spoken out, and instead of being dismissed, my words had landed. Celia's perfect image cracked in front of everyone, and my parents couldn't patch it fast enough. Sitting there, I realized something important. They might still defend her at home, but the world outside those walls had seen through the act. And that truth gave me a strength I hadn't felt in a long time. Graduation came faster than anyone expected. I had worked quietly, finishing extra courses, meeting every requirement ahead of time. When the day arrived, I walked across the stage with honors, my name read out clearly for everyone to hear. My parents clapped, but it was half-hearted, almost as if they hadn't realized until then how far I had gotten without them. What they didn't know was that I had already packed my bags. The acceptance letter and scholarship offer from a college hours away were hidden in my drawer for weeks. I had arranged everything: housing, classes, even a part-time job. The moment graduation was over, I wasn't coming back to that house for good. The night before I left, I sat at my desk with a pen and a blank sheet of paper. I didn't write with anger. I wrote with calm precision. I listed the years of favoritism, the nights they ignored my efforts, the day they let Celia erase what I had built, and every cruel word that followed. I wanted them to see it all laid out, not as an outburst, but as the truth they chose to overlook. At the end of the letter, I left them with one final line. "You deleted my dreams, but I built new ones without you." Then I folded the paper neatly and left it on the kitchen table where I knew they'd find it the next morning. I slipped out while the house slept, my suitcase rolling softly across the driveway. For the first time, I felt free air on my face, not heavy with resentment, but filled with possibility. The further I got from that house, the lighter I felt. In the weeks that followed, word spread quickly among our family. My relatives reached out, congratulating me on my scholarship and asking how I was settling in. Slowly, the stories about Celia began to surface. Her grades had tanked, her teachers were tired of excuses, and even her friends started drifting away once they saw through her behavior. The girl who had always been protected suddenly had no shield left. Meanwhile, the letter I left behind had its own effect. Relatives who had once admired my parents started questioning them. At gatherings, I heard from cousins that people whispered about how unfairly Royce and Danica had treated me, how they had raised Celia without discipline. The shine they worked so hard to maintain was wearing off, and they couldn't hide it anymore. I didn't have to gloat, and I didn't reach out. I stayed focused on my new life, my classes, my independence, my future. But knowing that the truth had finally caught up to them was its own kind of justice. They had tried to erase the one thing I loved, believing it would keep me small, believing it would keep Celia satisfied. Instead, all they managed to do was push me out the door toward a life they would never be part of. And that, in itself, was the quiet revenge I had been waiting for. College gave me the space I had been craving for years. I lived in a small dorm room, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No one barged in, no one dismissed what I cared about. I set my own schedule, studied what I wanted, and made choices without fear of judgment. For the first time, I felt in control of my life. I focused on my classes and worked part-time at the library. Every paycheck, no matter how small, felt like proof that I could stand on my own. My professors encouraged me, my classmates respected me, and slowly, my confidence grew back. I didn't just survive, I started to thrive. I didn't call my parents, and I didn't answer when they tried to reach out. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't rebuild my future while dragging the weight of their choices behind me. Silence became my boundary, and I guarded it carefully. Back home, things shifted without me. Word traveled through relatives, and I heard bits and pieces about Celia's life. The stories were never good. She skipped assignments, failed multiple classes, and started lashing out at the same people who once defended her. Friends who had once followed her around stopped answering her calls. The safety net my parents built around her was unraveling, and they didn't know how to handle it. Royce and Danica faced questions they couldn't ignore. Family members began to openly criticize the way they raised Celia, pointing out how their choices had led to her downfall. What once looked like devoted parenting now looked like neglect. They had protected her from every consequence until she couldn't stand on her own, and everyone could see it. I didn't celebrate her failures, but I didn't feel pity either. It wasn't my burden anymore. I had chosen my path, and she had chosen hers. Looking back, I realized something important. They thought destroying my work would break me. They thought they could erase the one thing I cared about and keep me under their control. But they only pushed me to create a life they could never touch. They thought they could take away the one thing that mattered to me. Instead, they pushed me to build a life they'll never be a part of. And honestly, that's the sweetest revenge. Do you think I was right to walk away from my parents and sister for good? Or should I have given them another chance to prove they could change? I'm really curious to know what you think in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next.